The Terrifying Lies Podcast, with music and stories by Craig Nybo. Greetings, friends, and welcome to the Terrifying Lies Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Nybo. Thank you for joining me on another episode. Before we dive in, I want to remind you how much great podcasts like this one live and die by their reviews. If you enjoy what you hear, take a moment to leave a glowing review wherever you listen. It helps more than you know. And hey, if there's a favorite episode you've got tucked away in the back of your mind, share it with a friend. Spread the terror, I always say. Tonight we continue with part 8 of a 13-part story. If you're tuning in for the first time, I recommend heading back to episode 1. It might save you from the confusion that comes with dropping into the middle of the madness. Here's where we stand. Twana Birch and her best friend, MindeeLee, have spent weeks teaching their cloned pop star idol, Bieber, not to be mistaken with any other by that name, how to dance, sing, and dazzle. They've entered him into a space bus talent show to sharpen his skills. But there's trouble. Mob boss Orlando DePescio, caught up in his illegal cloning schemes, has ordered his hitmen to erase all evidence, which means Twana, MindeeLee, and poor Bieber are marked for elimination. And now we rejoin our crew backstage, where the clone gets ready for his first live performance. The story is called Rock and Roll and Resurrection, Bieber's Finger, Part 8 of 13. Meanwhile, aboard an Intertran space bus somewhere in space, Twana, MindeeLee, and Bieber stood in the wings off stage watching one of the many acts unfold before the sizable Sapphire Lounge audience. Bieber's slot approached and all three of them had the jitters. On stage, a pair of elderly brothers dazzled the crowd with an accordion duet, Lady of Spain. They worked their bellows like artisans, moving around the stage, smiling, kicking, even slapping each other occasional high fives. If the two old men had been playing electric guitars instead of accordions, they might have been a heavy metal band with all the youthful vigor they showed during their performance. Bieber rubbed his hands together so hard that they warmed up as he watched the two men work the stage. MindeeLee took one of his hands and looked into his eyes.
It's going to be okay. You're gonna knock him flat.
Twana took notice of MindeeLee holding Bieber's hand and moved in behind him. She put her palms on his shoulders and began to massage.
Just go out there and show him your stuff. Do everything MindeeLee and I have taught you, and you'll end up winning this thing.
Bieber's breathing slowed as the two girls comforted him. Soon, it would be his turn. He felt like he'd forgotten everything. Every dance step, every lyric to stand. He didn't care so much about the audience or the prize. He just didn't want to let Twana and MindeeLee down. He hoped he could perform in a way that would make them happy. As MindeeLee held his hand and Twana massaged his shoulders and neck, he settled into a more relaxed state. The Sapphire Lounge rocked with people. It seemed everyone aboard the space bus had shown up for the talent show. Butch entered the back of the hall. He shook his head and he looked over the vast crowd. How would he ever find Twana or Jakes? The place was a mad rush of tourists. They stood at the bars, they sat at cocktail tables. Maintenance had set up hundreds of folding chairs on the dance floor so people, and a few creatures from other galaxies, could sit and watch the show. A pair of old men worked the stage. They played accordions, something classic and Latin. Both men wore lederhosen and green hats. They kicked up their heels to the music. They smiled at each other. They whooped. The crowd ate them up, clapping along, screaming, stomping their feet, along with the gleeful boom-pop, 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 boom-pop of the accordion music. Butch began his search at the rear of the room and worked his way back and forth. He excused himself as he cut through clumps of the crowd. He used his orange coverall uniform as an excuse, stating that he was with the maintenance department on official business. The crowd, for the most part, parted for him as he worked his way around the lounge. He cut to the dance floor and walked up and down the aisles of folding chairs. He glanced at every face. When people made eye contact with him, he smiled. He wanted to be invisible, to work incognito. But there he was, dressed in orange, moving obtrusively around the crowd, searching for a specific person. Someone tapped him on the shoulder. Butch wheeled around, balling up his fists, getting ready for a fight. It was Jeff Stacks. Butch rolled his eyes. He couldn't help it. He didn't have the time for another round with his boss right now.
Pinback,
Jeff said, almost shouting over the accordion duo, his face hard.
what are you doing here? Don't you have a list to attend to?
I just thought that with so many people, we might need extra maintenance support here tonight.
No.
Stacks said, shaking his head.
You have a clear set of directives, and those directives don't involve having a good time on the clock at the Sapphire Lounge.
Something caught Butch's attention, a red flash, high up on the back wall from one of the technical balconies. He glanced up and spotted a pinprick of light. He swore to himself under his breath. He had to get up there.
We have protocol, Mr. Pinback, and he who doesn't follow it may just find himself out of a job.
I can't talk now.
Butch said. Jeff took a step back and looked Butch up and down, his eyebrows raised into an arch.
What was that? I don't think I caught what you said.
I said I don't have time for this right now.
Butch kept his eyes up high on the balcony. Again, the red light flickered over the top of the balcony railing. Butch wheeled around and looked at the stage. A red dot flitted around the platform. It settled on the chest of one of the elderly accordion players. Only someone like Butch, or Jakes, would know to look for such a dot. The audience remained oblivious of someone calibrating a laser sight high up in the back of the lounge.
I need you to come with me right now,
Jeff said.
We need to have a talk.
Jeff pushed past Butch toward the back exit of the Sapphire Lounge. Butch wanted to head in that direction anyway, so he settled in behind his boss. Together, they wound through the crowd, toward the cocktail tables, past mobs of smiling talent show fans, toward the exit. The elderly accordion-playing brothers reached the final stretch of their act, a mad medley of bellowing notes and mayhem. One of the brothers got down on his knees while the other put a foot on his shoulder. Both of the men played like demons, working the keys so fast that Bieber and the girls, still backstage, saw blurs where the old man's hands should be. A stage manager, a woman with a pleasant smile, an Intertran t-shirt, and walkie-talkie, approached Bieber and the girls.
If you want to see your friend's performance, girls, it's time to head out into the house. He's up next.
MindeeLee and Twana looked at each other, smiles on their faces. In unison, they turned their heads and looked at Bieber. Twana spoke up.
You are gonna be okay.
I got this,
Bieber said. MindeeLee giggled.
I gotta say,
The stage manager said to Bieber.
you sure look like the real thing.
I hate that guy.
Bieber said. The stage manager chuckled. By the sound of it, the elderly accordion-playing duo were on the last throes of their magnificent stage ending. The brother, who had been on his knees, now lay prostrate on the ground while the other brother jumped over him, back and forth, plunging his fingers into the accordion each time he landed.
Time for you two to go.
The stage manager said to the girls. Twana and MindeeLee left. Ushers had reserved front and center seats for friends and family of performers. The two girls cut their way through the crowd to their seats and plopped down. They looked at one another, both of them smiling. As the accordion-playing brothers squeezed out their final notes, MindeeLee took Twana's hand. This was going to be their moment, and they planned to relish every second of Bieber's performance. Twana giggled, high-pitched and without reservation. It was a laugh that she reserved for brief glimpses of happiness in her otherwise heavy life. She hadn't felt joy in a long time, so she let her giggle go. As Butch followed Jeff toward the exit, he heard something new cut through the decrescendoing applause after the accordion-playing brothers' act. A laugh, female, high-pitched, full of elation. He hadn't heard that laugh in a long time, since his ma had taken such a terrible turn in her addiction and become a self-appointed invalid. He hadn't heard that laugh at all. It was Twana's laugh, and it came from a place she hadn't visited for years, a place of happiness. He looked toward the source of the laugh. He spotted the back of her head. She sat next to her blonde friend, the two of them holding hands. Butch's mouth graduated into the seeds of a smile. But then something stole any sense of momentary joy. A red dot appeared on the back of Twana's head. Butch's heart soured. Someone walked behind Twana, interrupting the shooter's aim. The red dot retracted on her. The couple stood from their seats behind Twana and stretched between acts or to chat, interrupting the shooter's aim again. Butch looked up at the balcony high on the back wall. There was the shooter drawing bead after bead on his sister. And if he could lock his aim, he would assassinate her, right here and now. Butch moved quickly past Jeff and trotted toward the exit.
Hey, where do you think you're going?
Jeff shouted, falling in behind him. Butch went out into the hall and looked for a way to the balcony. He spotted a door with a sign that read "Technical Personnel Only." He ran to the door.
What do you think you're doing?
Jeff said, closing in on Butch. Butch flicked his eyes around, searching for possible witnesses, then grabbed Jeff by the lapel. In one fluid motion, he pulled the door open and yanked Jeff inside the room. The two of them stood in a landing at the bottom of a metal staircase. The door swung shut on spring-loaded hinges. Butch shoved Jeff hard against the wall and drove a forearm into his throat to shut him up. He looked his boss in the eye. Jeff stopped yammering and paid attention.
I'm sorry for what I have to do. I don't have time right now for your protocol.
Pin back?
Stax rasped. Butch let loose Jeff's throat and grabbed him by the collar. Before Jeff could protest, Butch yanked him downward and drove a knee into his boss's forehead. The strike rang Jeff's bell, but didn't knock him completely unconscious. Butch rolled his eyes and looked around for something he could use to finish the job. He found a rack of soldiered belt barrier stanchions used to channel temporary waiting queues. He put a foot on one of the stanchion's bases and pulled the pole free. He raised it like a baseball bat and smacked his boss on the back of the head. Jeff folded over into a motionless pile.
Sorry, Jeff,
Butch said. He kept the stanchion pole and ran up the stairs. He landed in a short hallway with several doors. His first inclination was to pound the doors open one by one until he found Jake's, but he opted for stealth. He moved like a wraith to the first door and opened it. It led to an equipment room festooned with shelves of lighting and sound gear. He closed the door and continued his search. Lights tracked the MC as he moved from the wings out in front of the closed curtain to center stage. He wore the most polished smile Twana had ever seen. Punched by his purple suit coat, he looked more like a caricature than a man. He raised a wireless microphone to his lips and gestured toward the wings with one of his immaculately manicured hands.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Watchy brothers and their magic accordions.
The crowd cheered.
Weren't they amazing? You know, I'm thinking record and touring deal for those boys.
Most of the crowd laughed.
Next, we present something so special in lieu of recent events that I wouldn't be surprised to see a few tears start flowing. Just a few months ago, one of the lights on that great big blue ball of ours, that we call Earth, went out in an act so tragic that it shocked us into a state of consideration for our own security. I'm talking about the dreadful assassination of Bieber at the hands of Brennan Nix, a young man who should have been Bieber's friend.
The crowd issued a mournful groan.
That's right. When Bieber left our world, he left a hole that will never be entirely filled. But tonight, ladies and gentlemen, I present a young man who will try to rekindle that light that so recently went out, a young man who wants nothing more than to do his part in filling the hole that Bieber so sadly left behind.
People in the crowd looked at one another with confused expressions and raised eyebrows.
I offer you the premiere performance of a top-class Bieber tribute, none other than Mr. Donnie Cassidy.
Twana had written the fake name down on the talent show form. It didn't feel right for the clone to be introduced as anything other than Bieber, but for the moment, she had to keep his cover secure. The MC moved toward the wings, trailing an open arm behind him as the curtains parted to reveal Bieber, crouched on the stage, his back to the audience, his head tucked down onto one fist, his other arm extended out behind him, holding a microphone. Cool light spilled over his body. The crowd exploded into a gale of cheering as the opening refrains of Stand thumped over the PA system. Twana and MindeeLee held hands tighter as they watched Bieber begin to move his body subtly to the beat. Jakes finished calibrating the sight on his disposable nanoplastic rifle. During his fiasco at room 319, he had spotted a brochure for the Intertran talent show and reasoned that Butch's stupid sister planned to enroll her clone as a performer. He didn't plan to waste such an opportunity for flair as an assassin. He spent the afternoon casing the Sapphire Lounge and found that there were 3 control balconies high on the back wall of the auditorium. The stage crew used the center one for mixing and lighting control. Jakes had taken one of the others. The disposable gun would fire no more than 3 or 4 shots before he would have to throw it away, but he only needed 3 rounds, 1 for the clone and 1 for each of the girls. The talent show had begun before Jakes could finish calibrating the scope. He'd used the 2 accordion-playing buffoons as targets to lock in his aim. After a quick scan of the crowd, he spotted Twana and the blonde girl sitting on the front row. He'd chosen his vantage point wisely. From so high up, he would easily be able to put a round into each of the girls' heads with no trouble. He only had to wait for the clone to begin his act. Then, he would finish his game in 3 moves. Boom, boom, boom. Clone, Butch's sister, blonde. He sat back on his chair and waited for the crowd to settle. After the ridiculous accordion-playing brothers took their lauds and left the stage, the MC walked out in front of the curtains. He went into a gushing monologue about Bieber's assassination and how it had profoundly affected the people of Earth at a deep level. Jakes rolled his eyes as he listened. Finally, the MC raised a hand and introduced Donnie Cassidy, the clone's pseudonym, Jakes guessed. The curtains parted, and there he was, Bieber's clone. Jakes dropped to his knees and balanced the stock of the weapon on the rail that ran around the front of the balcony. He settled into a smooth breathing pattern and rested the crosshairs on Bieber's chest. The audience wouldn't notice a small red dot there, but a chest shot wouldn't do it. Jakes needed a kill in 1 round. Bieber crouched on the stage, his body pulsed to the beat. Jakes raised his aim to the clone's head. Just before he pulled the trigger, the music burst into a fast groove with guitars, drums, and synthesizers. Bieber popped to his feet with a sudden blast of energy and began to dance. Jakes swore under his breath and moved his finger from the trigger. He would have to wait for the clone to lay off the choreography. He remained in his firing posture, ready to touch off his fatal rounds as soon as he could lock his aim. The crowd came out of their seats as Bieber popped to his feet with a graceful flourish. MindeeLee and Twana stood up and put their hands in the air, all smiles and laughter. Bieber raised his microphone to his beautiful mouth and began the familiar chant of his song, Stand.
Come dance with me. Come dance with me.
Everyone, particularly the young eligible females, joined the chant in one big voice. Someone behind Twana and MindeeLee shouted over the music to a friend,
"He's just like the real thing."
MindeeLee and Twana looked at each other, enormous smiles on both of their faces. They had pulled it off. Against all odds, they had created the perfect Bieber. Bieber spun a mighty dance move and thunked into a striking pose. Microphone to mouth, hand across his chest, his hips cocked to one side. He went into a rapt verse of Stand.
Hey you, I'm looking out. I got a bang in my chest, yo, check it out. There ain't another one alive who can put it out. I wanna hear you now, I wanna hear you shout. Come dance with me. Stand! Come dance with me. Stand!
Someone in the front row began doing the funky monkey. The dance moves spread until everyone was moving. The house looked like a garden of gyration. Twana and MindeeLee danced with the crowd, giggling in the excitement. The clone looked and sounded like the real Bieber, and if the audience hadn't known better, they would have thought the pop star had come back from the dead for a resurrected performance. Nobody noticed the pinprick red dot as it flittered around the stage, trying to mark a critical spot on the clone. Butch moved through the hallway, trying the doors one at a time. The first 2 rooms held equipment, lights and sound, gear stacked on shelves. He opened another door and found a back office, file cabinets, a desk, a computer. Behind the next door, he found the mixing balcony. 3 technicians looked over their shoulders at him from their workstations, enormous sound and lighting boards.
Close the door.
One of them yelled.
Who are you, anyway?
Another of the techs shouted. Butch looked over the balcony, down at the stage across the Sapphire Lounge. Bieber worked the platform, all dance, pop, rap, and melody. Butch had to admit, his little sis had done a bang-up job bringing her boy up to speed.
Who are you?
The tech shouted again.
I'm from maintenance. We're looking into a power issue.
It wasn't great, but it was the best Butch could come up with under the circumstances.
We'll take it outside. You're letting light in.
The tech screamed. Butch shut the door behind him and continued down the hall. There's only one more door. He heard the distant thump of Bieber's song, as if it was being played through a tub of water. He stood back and made a quick estimation of the door's strength. He thought he could probably kick it in, but he had to do it in one go. He had to take Jakes by surprise, or he probably wouldn't survive a handful of seconds in the same room as the assassin. He cocked up one boot, screwed up his face, and kicked. The door partially gave in with a splintering sound. He kicked again, the door smashed open. Jakes crouched at a rail on the other side of the balcony, aiming a disposable rifle at the stage, which bounded to him in 2 sprinting steps. Jakes pulled the trigger, touching off a single silent round, which didn't have time to think about whether Jakes had hit his mark. He had to act. He raised the metal stanchion he had stolen from the downstairs landing and swung. In mid-flight, during one of Bieber's most glorious dance leaps, something went wrong. He curled around awkwardly in mid-leap and hit the stage with an awful thunk. The crowd collectively moaned in sympathetic pain. MindeeLee clutched down so tight on Twana's hand that it hurt. The music thumped on, but this time without Bieber rapping or singing. He writhed on the floor, wincing. A stage manager ran to Bieber's side. She crouched down next to him and turned him over. Blood bloomed from his chest through his shirt. She looked up from him, her eyes unhinged, her face pale.
He's been shot.
Someone in the audience shrilled out. Everything broke into pandemonium, reminiscent, Twana thought, of that terrible night when Bieber's limousine had gone up in flames. Panic spread throughout the crowd. People kicked up from their seats and ran, moving in clods, clawing their way toward the rear exits. Jeff Stacks gingerly rubbed the back of his head as he entered the Sapphire Lounge from the back. Pinback had cold-cocked him with a stanchion. When he tracked that no-good lazy maintenance man down, he was going to fire him for starters and lodge assault and battery charges on top of everything else. Pinback would spend the rest of his flight in the brig till Jeff could turn him over to the authorities back on Earth. As he entered the Sapphire Lounge, people came at him, running, clawing each other. A few of them tripped over themselves and tumbled to the floor. Some of the fallen, unable to stand up in the rush of humanity, curled into fetal positions, protecting their heads with barred-up forearms against trampling feet.
Oh, hold on a minute,
Jeff shouted.
Everybody just calm down and exit in an orderly manner.
He looked around the lounge for any sign of what had caused the pandemonium. A fire? Terrorism? But he saw nothing. He shouted out, trying to calm the stampede, but the place had exploded into a mad rush far beyond his control. For his own safety, he backed up against a wall behind a fake potted plant to wait out the smash of people.
Told me the day that you decided to stay. Hey, I only wanted to play, to send our troubles away. Hey, and then I thought you were gone, that I did everything wrong. Oh, I always tried to be strong, to play a lovelier song. Oh, I'm only giving what you need. I'm not the type to run into the lead. I want to take it at your speed. I'm not the type to kneel down and plead. And now you're back and I am free. I never knew we ever disagreed. I'm only giving what you need. I'll never give you the same empty promises everyone's ready to feed. And all I wanted was us, never an ulterior fuss. I wanted an armistice to all the sparks and the muss. The door behind you went slam, it nearly fell from its jam. You said I was such a sham, I gave you all that I am. I'm only giving what you need. I'm not the type to run into the lead. I want to take it at your speed. I'm not the type to kneel down and plead. And now you're back and I am free. I never knew we ever disagreed. I'm only giving what you need. I'll never give you the same empty promises everyone's ready to feed. And here we are again at last, making time for drifted past. I'll go at your speed, slow or fast, not in a mood to be recast. And so I'll take you as you are. You know I'm not a superstar. There is no need to raise the bar. Was love without a tracing scar. It's time to make our way now in our perilous way. It's time to shape our day now. I don't care what you do or you say. It's time to cast away now on our superhighway. To leave our yesterday now. In the past we can last in the fray. I'm only giving what you need. I'm not the type to run into the lead. I want to take it at your speed. I'm not the type to kneel down and plead. And now you're back and I am free. I never knew we ever disagreed. I'm only giving what you need. I'll never give you the same empty promises everyone's ready to feed.
Let's talk about today's song. Here's a fun fact. I've written far more songs than I've ever released. Some of them end up gathering dust until I stumble across them and think, why not share this with the world? The song for this episode is one of those. I can't recall why I recorded it. I don't remember what I meant to do with it. But there it is, dusted off and polished just enough to present to you. I hope it fits the mood of the episode and brings a smile. Or maybe. The song is called I'm Only Giving What You Want. And that, my friends, wraps up another episode of the Terrifying Lies podcast. Before I go, I want to leave you with this. Don't hold back from creating. Put your voice into the world. Your stories, your songs, your art, it matters. I'm always curious about what you're working on. If you feel like sharing, drop me a note. You can find me on Facebook or send a message to craiglnibo@gmail.com. I'm always excited to see what you've made. Until next time, I bid you sweet dreams. Or should I say, sweet nightmares.
This has been the Terrifying Lies podcast. Please, come again. You're welcome here.